Greetings. In today's video, we'll be diving deep into the dark arts that plague the magical world of Tamriel. Starting with necromancy, we'll work our way to exploring flesh magic, as well as other dark practices. We'll learn all about the history behind these nefarious disciplines, as well as their most notorious practitioners. Hope you enjoy. Necromancy, alternatively known as the necromantic arts, dark arts, or dark practice, involves the manipulation of the souls or corpses of the dead. Referred to as Alak Dilan by the dragons, it is a controversial field with differing cultural perspectives on its definition and limits. Broadly, it encompasses any form of soul manipulation, yet more commonly it denotes the binding and manipulation of mortal souls and the reanimation of corpses. Those who practice necromancy are identified as necromancers, colloquially referred to as necros. Their work primarily involves binding a soul to a prepared physical form, facilitating the soul's manipulation or the corpse's reanimation. Despite its varied definitions, necromancy is widely regarded as unethical and often illegal. It is criticized for its perceived violation of the natural life and death cycle and the desecration of spirits. This negative reputation stems partly from its association with Daedric influences, especially with the entity Molag Bal, also known as the father of vampires. Despite these condemnations, debates about the relative risks and merits of necromancy have persisted for centuries. The practice is closely tied to vampirism. Vampires, undead entities with a distinct connection to Molag Bal, frequently engage in or associate with necromancy. This bond reinforces the negative perception of necromancy, solidifying its association with the undead and otherworldly entities. Advocates of necromancy argue against its widespread condemnation, emphasizing the importance of understanding the practice to effectively counteract its misuse. They dismiss the alleged inherent dangers, suggesting that necromancy's connection to other magical schools like conjuration, enchantment, and mysticism diminishes the supposed divide. Contrarily, opponents assert the importance of ethical considerations and caution in handling necromancy. They argue for restricted access, permitting only the most knowledgeable and trustworthy mages to engage in its practice, and only to be used to counteract its use by others. The soul, or animus, the life force inherent in all beings, remains beyond the grasp of complete mortal comprehension. Despite its elusive nature, mages successfully harness soul energy without unraveling the intricacies behind it. The harvesting and utilization of souls, categorized as white and black, are central to conjuration and necromancy, respectively. White souls originate from lesser creatures, while the potent black souls derive from mortals. Furthermore, the manipulation of souls is a key fixture in necromancy and central to its controversies. Across Tamriel, diverse civilized and intelligent uncivilized races, like goblins, have engaged in necromancy. Their ability and methods of practicing depend on their objectives, abilities, and moral limits. Expert necromancers can resurrect long-deceased individuals. However, most practitioners prefer fresh corpses, as utilizing older remains can lead to incomplete soul binding and potential danger to the necromancer from the reanimated subjects. Certain necrotic spells particularly demand the remains of the elderly, believed to possess heightened necrotic energy due to life's natural decay. People from all walks of life are drawn to necromancy for diverse reasons, predominantly the pursuit of power. For example, in many instances in Tamriel's history, protectors have had to seal crypts, unable to combat the undead armies raised by such skilled necromancers. An individual may pursue necromancy for varied reasons. Some seek dominion, amassing undead armies to establish control, while others pursue specific experimental objectives. Unfortunately, the practice attracts individuals with sinister inclinations, leading to further corruption of the soul. A significant motivation behind necromancy lies in the desperate quest for resurrection. Numerous necromancers, driven by the anguish of loss, aim to revive their loved ones. Despite sporadic reports of success in binding souls back to their original bodies, achieving true resurrection remains an unattained dream within the necromantic community. Necromancers are known for their ability to control reanimated servants, and this ability is directly proportional to the servant's intelligence and life. Animal reanimation, while possible, yields limited utility, producing mere guard dogs or potentially uncontrollable entities. The reanimation of skeletons demands meticulous preparation to ensure structural integrity. All essential bones must be correctly assembled, and various techniques are utilized to enhance the skeleton's mobility and stability. Despite their fragility and the challenge of multiple reanimations, skeletons are often preferred for their cleanliness and agility compared to their zombie counterparts. Necromancers use various innovative methods to prepare skeletons for reanimation. Animals, like mud crabs in Morrowind, are employed to strip flesh from corpses, leaving the bones ready for use. If a body, too decayed for full reanimation, is suitable as a skeleton, it is placed near a marsh to allow local creatures to prepare the bones further. Even dismembered or moderately decayed corpses can be reanimated, using leather straps to reassemble and stitch the body. Beyond mere skeletal reanimation, necromancers can invest time in mummification to create stronger, more responsive servants. This process involves a month-long salt bath, removal of vital organs, and wrapping the corpse in linen. The resulting mummified servant presents increased durability and comprehension of commands, leading to more effective, independent action. Furthermore, the Order of the Black Worm has a notorious reputation for creating zombies known as worm thralls. Initially, the term worm thrall referred to the Order's subordinates. Over time, the practice of transforming individuals into worm thralls emerged, serving dual purposes: as a form of punishment and as a means to preserve subjects for extended research. A notable instance of this was when Manam Marco raised Vanus Galerion, along with several other former archmages of the Mages Guild, as worm thralls. Necromancers continually develop innovative techniques for soul manipulation and corpse reanimation. Another method involves the conjuration of frost around a human corpse, followed by the infusion of a loyal spirit into the frost rather than the body. While the resulting servant can perform only basic tasks, its creation requires minimal necromantic knowledge, offering an accessible reanimation option for less experienced practitioners. The morality of necromancy isn't always so black and white, and despite its ethical concerns and coercive nature, Vastery, a contemporary of notable figures Vanus Galerion and Manam Marco, proves an exception, exemplifying the possibility of ethical necromancy. Vastery, a compelling historical figure, pursued necromancy with a different aim than her counterparts. While Manam Marco exploited necromantic energies for power, Vastery developed methods to consult sentient souls post-death for their knowledge, prior to their peaceful departure to Aetherius, also known as the Immortal Planes, thus avoiding permanent binding. Despite her peaceful and beneficial intent, Vastery faced substantial opposition from both Manam Marco and Galerion. Unable to conduct her experiments within the Mages Guild, she gathered a group of students to further her ethical necromantic research. Her compassionate approach, however, struggled against Manam Marco's promise of power, leading to her eventual disappearance and the proliferation of a more cruel brand of necromancy across Tamriel. The book, On Necromancy, promotes a thoughtful and ethical form of necromancy, emphasizing the well-being of the souls involved. Contrary to mainstream necromantic practice, this text discourages working on fresh corpses due to the residual connection of the soul to the body, which could lead to the torment of the original spirit. Members of the Undaunted also engage in a form of practical necromancy, viewing it as a valuable branch of magic despite its societal taboo. Their use of necromancy aims for beneficial applications, such as life preservation during their exploits, contributing positively to their reputation as they combat various threats. The ancient Khajiit Order of the Hidden Moon utilized necromancy to aid Dromathra in achieving salvation. By possessing the bones of deceased Khajiit, Dromathra could confront their sins and potentially liberate their souls from the Daedric Prince Nimira's grasp, highlighting another aspect of ethical and redeeming necromancy. Now that we've covered the background of necromancy, it's only natural that we transition by exploring the history of Tamriel's most notorious practitioners of the dark arts, starting with the King of Worms himself, Manam Marco. Manam Marco, renowned as the King of Worms or the Worm King, was an Altmer necromancer whose life and deeds are chronicled in various historical texts, many of which also detail the era he lived in and his nemesis, Vanus Galerion. Hailing from an uncertain royal lineage, Mannimarco's life spanned significant historical events. He was present during the Middle Dawn, a period that lasted from 1200 the First Era to 2208 the First Era, during which he acquired his mystery from the Maracati Selectives. By around 230 the Second Era, Manam Marco became a prominent student within the Sigil Order on the island of Arcane in the Somerset Isles. There he was celebrated as one of the Order's most exceptional members, with his magical talents being closely rivaled only by another prodigious student, Vanus Galerian, who would later establish the Mages Guild. While Galerian was described as having a light and warm heart, Manam Marco's was characterized as dark and cold. Even during his studies, Manam Marco exhibited a penchant for necromancy and soul trapping. Galerian, disturbed by Manam Marco's dark practices, confronted him about his use of necromancy. When Manam Marco dismissed Galerian's concerns, the Sigil Order banished him from Arcane due to his sinister inclinations. Unfazed by this exile, Manam Marco spent the subsequent years amassing followers and disseminating his dark arts. Manam Marco eventually founded the Order of the Black Worm, a cult notorious for its practice of necromancy. Other names for the order include the Cult of the Black Worm or Worm Cult, but it was officially recognized as the Fellowship of Anchorites during its brief imperial charter. The cult is best recognized as the Necromancers due to their dark practices. They structured their organization in a series of cells called worm nests. Each was overseen by a worm anchorite, guiding adepts, worm warriors, and thralls. The cult's attraction lay in its promises of immense power and secrecy under penalty of undeath. While Vanus Galerian established the Mages Guild, Manam Marco secretly set up the order in parallel. The two orders clashed multiple times, including during the Plane Meld, where Galerian was killed. Archmage Galerian tried countering the order's influence, especially in areas like soul trapping, but Manam Marco's influence was substantial, making necromancy appear commonplace. Eventually, in certain places like Cidel, necromancy was legally accepted. The order expanded its reach by recruiting various mages, including those from the Mages Guild, outcast witches, and Reachmen wizards. During the Alliance War, around 582 the Second Era, the Order, under Mannimarco's guidance, spread its dark activities across Tamriel. They collaborated with Molag Bal, a reason they were sometimes labeled as a Daedric cult. With Empress Clivia Tharn under Mannimarco's influence, the Order freely operated in Cidel, replacing the Mages Guild in the Arcane University and advising the Ruby Throne. High Chancellor Abner Tharn of the Elder Council became a prominent leader of the cult. During the Imperial Simulacrum, the Order sought various artifacts, chasing those with knowledge about items like Spellbreaker and the Staff of Magnus. Leading up to the Warp in the West in 417 the Third Era, they pursued political agendas in the Iliac Bay region, from their base in Skorg Barrow, even allying with key figures like Lord Kavar and Princess Morgaya. After the Warp, Manam Marco's image transformed from the King of Worms to the God of Worms. The Necromancers Moon, often referred to as the Revenant, is the celestial representation of Manam Marco, the God of Worms. Born from the events of the Warp in the West in 417 the Third Era, Manam Marco utilized the Mantella, a massive green gem, also known as the Crux of Transcendence, that contained the heart or life force of an entity known as the Underking, to ascend and transform into this divine state. Every 8 days, this moon overshadows the planet Arcane, causing a phenomenon called the Shade of the Revenant. During this 24-hour period, a distinct purple light descends upon selected locations in Tamriel. This eclipse serves a specific purpose: to undermine the divine principles set by Arcane, solidifying Manam Marco's role as the sole deity governing life and death. Manam Marco's followers revere him as the God of Worms, and they strategically build altars across Tamriel, capitalizing on the Shade of the Revenant to craft powerful black soul gems. Hotima Septim, better known as the Wolf Queen, was a formidable queen of solitude in Hoffinger, Skyrim during the Third Era. Born into the illustrious Septim bloodline in year 66 the Third Era, she was the daughter of Pelagius Septim II and Quintilla. Scholars have often cited her as one of the few historical figures they view as unambiguously evil. Growing up in the Imperial City, Potima was distanced from her parents and had a brother, Antiochus, who was 16 years her senior and had a reputation for womanizing. Despite her formal tutoring, the young princess also learned to pick locks and stealthily navigate the imperial palace. Using her skills, she would often blackmail members of her family with stolen documents. Her grandfather, Emperor Uriel Septim II, once commented upon seeing her as an infant, remarking she resembled a she-wolf about to pounce. Following the deaths of Pelagius II and Antiochus and the subsequent ascension of her son Uriel to Solitude's throne, Potima became even more politically active. She entertained nobles from regions such as Skyrim, High Rock, and Morrowind, making allies and sowing dissent against the reigning emperor. The War of the Red Diamond ignited due to Potima's challenge to the legitimacy of her niece, Kintira II, Antiochus's heir. She claimed Kintira was a bastard. Ignored by the Elder Council, Potima marshaled troops in preparation for conflict. She directly commanded armies and, according to some accounts, was instrumental in the capture and possible execution of Empress Kintira. Potima's forces suffered significant setbacks with the capture of her son Uriel at the Battle of Ichidag and his subsequent death at the hands of a mob. With these events, many of Potima's allies defected to support Sepphoris I. Despite the war's official end with Uriel's death, Potima continued her fight, turning to dark arts, summoning Daedra and undead to her aid. In 137 the Third Era, after an extended siege, she met her demise. Late in the Third Era, the underground group, Horm, venerated Potima, considering her and Uriel III as the last true Septim descendants, leading to periodic raids on imperial territories. Potima's influence was so far-reaching that some believed she indirectly caused the insanity of Pelagius the Mad. In 201, the Fourth Era, necromancers attempted to resurrect Potima, but the last Dragonborn intervened, vanquishing her spirit beneath Solitude. The moniker Wolf Queen was derived not from her looks, but from a soul gem necklace she inherited. This necklace housed the soul of a formidable werewolf slain by her parents. Some sources also suggest Potima might have played a part in driving Pelagius the Mad to insanity through an enchanted amulet she gave him during the Siege of Solitude. The Slode, sometimes referred to as Slugmen, hail from the Isles of Thras within the Abyssinian Sea. These amphibious slug-like creatures are particularly infamous for their unparalleled skills in necromancy, earning them the title of Tamriel's most renowned necromancers and making them widely despised across the continent. These creatures have often been associated with unsettling practices. For instance, they've been known to use airships to transport vast numbers of corpses from Central to Thras. Moreover, Slode merchants in Tyr have a notorious reputation for acquiring a significant number of slaves, who are then presumed to be killed and resurrected as thralls. Although there is no recorded instance of Slode practicing necromancy on their own kind within Tamriel, it wouldn't be surprising if such rituals were performed in Thras. One particularly unsettling practice involves the use of their own larvae in necromantic rituals. In Thras, it's common for Slode to resurrect various deceased marine creatures, including crabs and turtles, keeping them as peculiar pets. When expanding their territories or launching invasions, the Slode often deploy their necromantic prowess, particularly gaining notoriety for summoning vast sea monsters in coastal regions. Nagasta, a formidable Slode necromancer, was renowned for his spell, Soul Snare, in his literary work, Nagasta Kavata Kavakis. He served both Clavicus Vile and Mannimarco during the reign of Thasad II in the Second Era. Nagasta relocated to Stros Makai, a decision influenced by Mannimarco, who granted him the Isle. While Ator, the son of High King Thasad of Hammerfell, was alive, he managed to suppress Nagasta's influence, but post his demise, Nagasta unleashed the Soul Snare net over Stros Makai. This spell ensnared the souls of anyone who died on the island, barring those who received holy rites or were on sacred land. Nagasta's residence wasn't on the main island. He chose to inhabit a smaller, northwestern island named the Isle of Nagasta, where he occupied an ancient wizard's tower. Clavicus Vile, in exchange for souls, bestowed favors upon Nagasta. Furthermore, it was the King of Worms who authorized Nagasta's residence on the island. The necromancer also had interactions with the new governor, Emil Reichten, gifting him a distinctive red diamond amulet set with a dragon motif. Unbeknownst to many, This amulet was actually Prince Ator's soul gem. The Red Guard hero, Cyrus the Restless, taking up the task to deliver this amulet, eventually uncovered that Nagasta had imprisoned his sister's body while her soul gem was with Clavicus Vile. To safeguard himself, Nagasta fortified his tower with undead and Daedra. However, Cyrus managed to infiltrate, confront, and eventually defeat Nagasta, who upon death, transformed into a blue puddle. Cyrus then ventured into Clavicus Vile's domain to rescue his sister. Karanya, a high elf necromancer, holds the esteemed position of Master Wizard on the Council of Mages, serving alongside figures like Hannibal Traven, Raminus Polis, and Erlav Jarl. She has a station at the Arcane University, where prior to certain events, she spends her days primarily in the Archmage's Tower Council Room. Despite Archmage Traven's explicit prohibition of necromancy within the guild, Karanya clandestinely continues her necromantic practices. This treachery becomes evident during the Necromancer's Amulet quest. At its onset, she abruptly relocates to Fort Ontis with the amulet, affiliating herself with the Fort Ontis Mages Guild. Upon a confrontation in Fort Ontis, Karanya reveals her allegiance to Manam Marco, defying Traven and the guild. Her refusal to surrender the amulet escalates to a battle, as she intends to exploit its power for Manam Marco. Her demeanor suggests an inflated sense of importance within the guild, as reflected in her greeting. Draugr Lord Asip. Asip, once a member of the Skull community, delved into the dark arts of necromancy. Due to his controversial studies, he faced banishment from his tribe. Later in his life, Asip uncovered a sinister plot by a group of potent Daedra intending to eradicate all life on the island of Solstheim. Determined to shield the island and its people, he harnessed his magical prowess to confine these Daedra within a frozen cavern beneath Lake Fjalding. Recognizing the limits of his mortal life, Asip transformed himself into an undead being to gain the permanence required to guard against the Daedric threat indefinitely. Golthog the Dark, a goblin linked to the Underking, was prominent during the Imperial Simulacrum. Besides his allegiance, whispers suggested he was a practitioner of necromancy. Along with a goblin cohort, Golthog launched an assault on Rehad in Hammerfell. From this attack, they not only plundered significant treasure, but also secured a document. This particular document held the key to interpreting a segment of the Elder Scrolls, which pinpointed the location of the Fang Lair. Divaith Fear. While only dabbling in necromancy, Divaith Fear is an ancient Dunmer sorcerer who boasts power so immense that it can be felt from Dranil Kir near the Somerset Isles all the way to Mournhold. Despite being over 4,000 years old, his prowess in magic remains unchallenged. Affiliated with the Great House Telvanni, Fear tends to distance himself from their internal politics. He doesn't occupy a regular seat on the Telvanni Council, but serves in an advisory capacity. Still, he holds respect for their decisions and usually fulfills their directives. His past affiliations include the Sijic Order, where he acted as a master of secrets and a guardian of the old ways, emphasizing balance. In his early years, Fear was intrigued by necromancy, but over time, he shifted his focus to other facets of conjuration. His journeys into the Daedric realms of Oblivion are documented in books like The Doors of Oblivion and Varieties of Daedra, the latter penned by a former disciple. Furthermore, Fear authored several books, including one titled Sorcery is Not Necromancy. This particular work was an endeavor to differentiate standard conjurers from necromancers, a distinction he felt was crucial to clarify. Despite his adeptness at necromancy, he refrained from employing it for immortality purposes. Olasita Grakog. Olasita played a significant role during the interregnum of the Second Era and the late Third Era. Originating from the Cog clan of orcs, Olasita was inducted into the Sijic Order around 232 the Second Era. This induction meant renouncing her past and embracing the Sijic Order's old ways. Despite her dedication, she was dubbed Admana, meaning poor listener in High Elvish by her instructors. Around 582, the Second Era, she discovered the Eye of Remembrance. This led her to the Trader's Vault, once Manam Marco's laboratory, during his Artaeum tenure. While exploring with a Sijic Order associate, they unearthed details about Manam Marco and Vanus Galerian's early rivalry. However, her exploration did not go unnoticed. The Relic Master, Glenadir, caught her, resulting in her banishment from the Sijic Order. After her expulsion, she relocated to the newly constructed Second Orsinium, settling at the Temple of Ire. By the Third Era, Ocita swiftly became a part of the local mages guild in Nova Orsinium, rising to the position of Magister. As Magister, she ardently defended necromancy against the criticisms of Voth Carlus, the Magister of Corinth. By the era's end, Archmage Hannibal Traven prohibited guild mages from practicing the black arts. During this period, it was revealed that Ocita not only advocated for necromancy, but also practiced it. This revelation led the Order of the Lamp to pursue her, though she evaded their grasp. Her defense of necromancy was recorded in the book, The Black Arts on Trial. Archmage Traven deemed her arguments significant enough to include in the document. Ocita Gracog's eventual fate remains a mystery. Now that we've touched on necromancy, it's time that we examine the twisted practice that is flesh magic. Flesh magic, an ancient and arcane form of magic, is said to predate the world itself. It's driven by what's called the sixth element, flesh. Legend suggests that the element of flesh emerged from the initial 5 elements, earth, water, air, fire, and light. As the void took shape, when darkness transitioned into day, the element of flesh was conceived and remained concealed due to its self-awareness, making it a mystery to many in contemporary times. Unlike necromancy, which focuses on reviving the deceased, flesh magic revolves around crafting life. This is achieved by tethering an eternal soul to a mix of meat, blood, bone, and breath, the foundational components of genuine flesh. Each of these components has a crucial function. Meat embodies the urge to eat, blood, the fluid of life, holds its very essence, bone grants form and solidity, breath imparts motion and awakens spirit. Over extended periods, these vital elements can be refined into their mystical states, those being osseous marrow, dermis membrane, essence of breath, and blood liquor. When combined, these elements form the essence of flesh. This serves as the foundation for a new entity, which is then bound to a summoned Atronach's Daedric spirit. This spirit, known as the quintessence of flesh, encapsulates perception, memory, and imagination. Uniting the essence and quintessence of flesh through a binding ritual results in a golem, or flesh Atronach. This creature is seen by some as the embodiment of the true element of flesh, akin to the elemental Daedra from Oblivion. The principles of flesh magic might differ from necromancy, yet some mages view them as one and the same. Others categorize it under the conjuration school. Ancient Aldmer texts first documented flesh magic. Following the Regatta invasions in 808 the First Era, Nedic mage Mavia employed flesh magic using sacrifices to forge a flesh Atronach to guard Shada's Tyr city. Manam Marco, before his exile from the Sigic Order, explored flesh magic around 230 the Second Era, producing the inaugural flesh colossus on Artaeum Island. During the Plane Meld in the mid-Second Era, flesh magic experienced a surge in prominence, with Moloch Baal's minions, guided by Manam Marco, conjuring varied flesh Atronachs. However, as eras passed, the art waned. While some establishments like the College of Winterhold approved of certain necromantic dark arts, flesh magic faced widespread disdain throughout Tamriel. Modern times have witnessed only 2 practitioners of this art, both deemed insane. Relmina Verenum. Relmina, a Dunmer from Tamriel, made her mark during the Third Era. Her most profound discovery in Tamriel was the so-called sixth element, flesh. However, the radical nature of her experiments led to her expulsion from the Mages Guild. The Daedric Prince, Sheogorath, recognizing her unique talents, extended an invitation to his domain, the Shivering Isles, offering her an environment free from judgment. This gesture ignited an intense and obsessive adoration in Relmina towards the Daedric Prince. Relmina's renown in the Shivering Isles largely stems from her crafting of the first gatekeeper. She embarked on this groundbreaking endeavor by employing the magical constituents found in the Gardens of Flesh and Bone. After piecing together several enchanted body parts, she achieved the formation of a body. With Sheogorath's divine madness as the catalyst, the gatekeeper was born. The culmination of this creation process was marked by Relmina's tears, and ironically, its destruction in 433 the Third Era involved the bones of a former gatekeeper. This demise of her quote-unquote child led Relmina, alongside her pupil, Nanette Dawn, to retreat to her sanctuary, the Zalselm ruins. Here, she immersed herself in studying the intricacies of pain. That same year witnessed the invasion of the Fringe by the forces of order. The champion of Sheogorath was dispatched to collaborate with Relmina in the creation of a new gatekeeper. Initially hesitant due to the champion's role in the original gatekeeper's death, Relmina eventually relented. Together, they crafted a new gatekeeper using a Daedric binding ritual, successfully repelling the Order's takeover of the Fringe. Calixto Corium. Calixto, once a renowned imperial adventurer, later gained infamy as the Butcher, a serial killer who haunted Windhelm in the 4th Era. In the early part of the 2nd century of the 4th Era, Calixto and his sister, Lucilia, inherited a sizable fortune. The siblings journeyed together, amassing a collection of unique artifacts, including the Book of Fate, the Dancer's Flute, and Ysgramor's Soup Spoon. However, a mysterious event led to Lucilia's death, leaving Calixto heartbroken and desperate to revive her. To resurrect Lucilia, Calixto delved deep into forbidden magic. His dissatisfaction with the conventional teachings at the College of Winterhold in Skyrim drove him to the hidden realms of flesh magic. Windhelm soon became his chosen ground, its populace a source of essential ingredients for his dark experiments. Wanting to camouflage his intent, Calixto established Calixto's House of Curiosities in Windhelm, showcasing the artifacts from his travels. By 201, the 4th Era, he had earned the city's trust, paving the way for his sinister plans. He began targeting young women, believing their sacrifices served a higher purpose. Notable victims included Fiotle of Clan Cruelty and Isabella. He later targeted Frigga of Clan Shattershield, using ancient embalming tools for his ritual. Calixto's operations were centralized in the back room of Hiram, where he performed experiments atop a blood altar, with the Necromancer's amulet aiding him. As the estate fell into disuse, it also housed his journals and pamphlets about the Butcher's activities. Following the murder of a barmaid named Susanna the Wicked, a traveler took interest in the case, aided by the steward. Unraveling the mystery led them to Hiram, and with assistance from the court wizard, Wunferth the Unliving, they identified the killer. In the end, Calixto met his doom at the hands of this stranger. The Reachmen, known as the Witchmen of High Rock, have a deep connection with the dark arts, otherwise known as reach magic. This association is attributed to their trade with the Orsimer in the Rothgarian Mountains and their ceremonial rites with the Hagravens, which include sacrifices to harness dark nature magic. This magic is believed to originate from Hircine. Even though the Mages Guild has prohibited its use, the allure of reach magic has led many to study it clandestinely. One of the most potent applications of reach magic is conjuring the ferocious bloodthorn and bloodroot vines from ritual sacrifice remains. These thorny massive roots can not only blight the land, but can also be molded into rough mockeries of life. The Dreadhorn clan's Hagraven offers an example of this capability. Within the Huntsman's Bloodroot Forge, she shaped the thriving vines into Nirn-blooded creatures, akin to the Bosmer's Wild Hunt beasts, but empowered by Nirncrux. These transformed entities maintain a voracious appetite for blood. Additionally, some Reachmen, known as Gravesingers, harness a comparable power granted by Molag Bal. In return for the capability to control the undead, these necromancers make pacts with Baal. These Gravesingers can manipulate corpses using seeds of wicked vines. However, Molag Bal's gifts come with a price, potentially leaving a Gravesinger's body decaying. One example was Angolf the Gravesinger, also known as Angolf the Undying. Angolf is a Reachman necromancer who leads the Bloodthorn cult, a group comprised of necromancers and bandits. Their primary objective was to dominate Glenumbra and transform its inhabitants into zombies. However, after failing to please his master, Molag Bal, Angolf was banished to the Cliffs of Failure in Cold Harbor. When talking about the dark arts, one would be remiss to not discuss the artifacts that have played a pivotal role throughout history, many of which have been known to enhance their owner's magical capabilities. The Necromancer's Amulet. The Necromancer's Amulet is a storied artifact attributed to Manam Marco. This exquisite amulet often bears a jade skull, sometimes entirely shaped as a diminutive skull with radiant eyes, bestowing considerable magical prowess, including heightened protection, injury regeneration, and augmented conjuration skills. Its allure comes with significant drawbacks, depleting the wearer's vitality and stamina. Despite its instability and transient existence, it remains a coveted object among thieves and mages. During the Imperial Simulacrum, the Eternal Champion unearthed the amulet, speculated to be found in either High Rock or the Somerset Isles. In 405, the Third Era, an adventurer claimed the amulet upon quelling an undead uprising in the Iliac Bay area. The convoluted journey involving the Mages Guild and a wronged wizard spirit ended with the successful retrieval of the amulet, although conflicting tales suggest other artifacts being the actual focus of this adventure. Around the same era, credible sources suggest the Underking's possession of the amulet, offered as a reward for the return of the Totem of Tiber Septim. The subsequent warp in the west clouds the amulet's history, with speculation of its transfer to an unknown Blades agent. By 427, the Third Era, Archmage Trebonius Artorius of the Vardenfell Mages Guild possessed the amulet, which was eventually claimed by the Nerevarine under contentious circumstances. Then in 433, the Third Era, amidst Mannimarco's resurgence, the amulet relocated to the Arcane University for protection. It was pilfered by the treacherous Karanya. Fortunately, this plan was thwarted by the hero of Kvatch, and the amulet was secured, preventing Mannimarco's empowerment. And finally, in 201, the Fourth Era, after the Mages Guild's dissolution, Calixto Corium of Windhelm, devastated by his sister's death, found and lost the amulet. His descent into necromancy and intent to resurrect his sister was foiled by the last Dragonborn, who uncovered Calixto's role as the Butcher. Despite its tumultuous history and continual shifts in possession, the Necromancer's amulet's current location remains shrouded in mystery, its potent powers still attracting those traversing the arcane and the illicit paths alike. Bloodworm Helm. The Bloodworm Helm, crafted from troll bone by the infamous Manam Marco, stands as a powerful but morbid artifact, offering enhanced conjuration skills, control over the undead, and other formidable powers, especially to those already within the grasp of undeath. Despite its majestic allure, its grim origins incite repulsion. Upon his rise to divinity during the Warp in the West, Manam Marco left behind the helm, a symbol of his necromantic legacy. By 427, the Third Era, the helm found itself in the hands of Crazy Batau, a Nord necromancer dwelling within an ancestral tomb in Vardenfell's Moleg Amor region. His demise at the hands of the Nerevarine led to the helm's sale and eventual display in the Mournhold Museum of Artifacts. Later, the Mages Guild acquired the helm, transporting it to the Arcane University in Cidel for safeguarding. Mannimarco's interference in mortal affairs in 433, the Third Era, aiming to obliterate the Mages Guild, led Master Wizard Urlav Gerol and a research team to Fort Telemann in Blackwood. Despite Archmage Hannibal Traven's reservations, the team studied to understand Mannimarco's power and inadvertently summoned Deadly Daedra, culminating in Urlav's death. Amidst the order of the Blackworm's assault to retrieve the helm for Mannimarco, a Mages Guild member reclaimed it from the chaos, restoring it to the Archmage's tower. In the Fourth Era, a necromancer's quest to collect Mannimarco's artifacts, including the Bloodworm Helm, led to an apprentice's confusion between it and another helm. The aftermath saw a new apprentice, Naara, ensnared in a deadly trap while attempting to seize the gathered artifacts. Circa 201, the Fourth Era, the last Dragonborn, delving into the Gallows Hall, unraveled the puzzles set by the former owner, claiming Mannimarco's artifacts and the lair as their own. Staff of Worms. The Staff of Worms, a potent artifact once wielded by the King of Worms, Mannimarco, stands as a macabre masterpiece, featuring a rotting skull clasped by 3 skeletal hands. The staff's formidable power resurrects the dead, binding them as allies to the wielder. It comes into possession of the one who successfully confronts and defeats Mannimarco during the Mages Guild quest, Confront the King. Upon its use, the Staff of Worms revives a targeted NPC for a period of 30 seconds. The resurrected entities marked by their glowing purple form and eyes will combat any foe antagonistic to the hero. They retain all abilities possessed in life, including specialized armor and skills. Despite its remarkable power, the staff does not confer Mannimarco's extensive necromantic abilities to the user. It falls short in creating permanent worm thralls, denying the wielder the opportunity to establish an unyielding army of the undead. The reanimated entity's brief existence also limits their usefulness in prolonged combat situations, but for those lacking in conjuration prowess, the repeated use of the staff serves as a beneficial tool, augmenting their abilities in this arcane domain. The practice of necromancy is highly dependent upon the region of Tamriel, with some being much more lenient and open than others. Black Marsh. In Black Marsh, the rapid decay of corpses poses significant challenges for necromancers. Furthermore, the region's unique difficulties, such as rampant diseases, aggressive Argonian tribes, and other environmental challenges, make it even harder for necromancers to function. Argonians, the native inhabitants, rarely practice necromancy due to their belief in living in the present and leaving the dead undisturbed in the past. However, some tribes, like the Vishkil, are known to commune with the dead, earning them a sinister reputation. Notably, a few slowed necromancers have managed to operate in Black Marsh, but they typically remain close to the coast for convenience. Cidel. Necromancy, while prohibited in Morrowind and the Mages Guild, was still legal in Cidel. Throughout the Imperial Province's history, there have been periods where necromancy was widely practiced and even accepted by the public. The sole time when necromancy was believed to be outlawed across the entire empire was during Raymond II's reign in the late First Era. The ancient Aelids, Cyrodiil's elves of old, were reputed to have significant necromantic knowledge. While they were renowned for their use of undead armies, legends also hint at their pacts with Daedric princes, suggesting that their power may not have been purely from necromancy. Numerous Aelid city-states practiced necromancy openly for many generations during the Merethic era. Specifically, the city of Abigarlus, notorious for worshipping Moloch Baal, often used undead hordes against its adversaries. The Empire has occasionally employed necromancers, granting them legal access to the bodies of traitors and criminals for their work. Around 582, the Second Era, during the Alliance War, the Mages Guild fell out of favor in Cidel and was expelled from the Imperial City. Concurrently, the Order of the Black Worm rose to prominence. Manam Marco, operating behind the scenes, effectively controlled the Empire and maintained connections with Hyrock's Witchmen. Moreover, Yeagar Tharn, during his masquerade as Emperor Uriel Septim VII, practiced necromancy and deployed undead minions. Tharn had plans to turn the Eternal Champion, a formidable adversary, into an undead servant with retained memories for added meaning. However, his inability to defeat the hero meant these plans remained unrealized. Elsewhere. Elsewhere is known for its lenient attitude towards necromancy. The Khajiit generally display little concern over desecrated graves, and it's even rumored that corpses can be bought in the port of Sinchal. While the forests of Elsewhere are not conducive to preserving bodies, the region's deserts can keep corpses intact for centuries. This preservation makes it easier for necromancers to harness them for their purposes. Additionally, the customary burial method in the deserts, which involves placing the bodies under a modest cairn of stones, provides convenient access for necromancers seeking materials. Hammerfell. Red Guards have a strong disdain for necromancy, stemming from their profound respect for their ancestors. This deep-seated reverence has made them averse to any engagements with the undead, leaving them susceptible to necromancers. Their distaste for necromancy is believed to influence their general skepticism towards magic. The Ashaba, a Red Guard tribe, are committed to eradicating the undead and purifying mausoleums. However, due to their association with the dead, mainstream Red Guard society regards them with distrust and deems them a necessary evil. Consequently, they live as exiles in Hammerfell's wastelands, perpetually confronting their adversaries. In the First Era, 3 Anse warriors, honoring a pact with Tuatha, sacrificed their souls to craft the Anse wards. These magical artifacts hindered even the mightiest necromancers from resurrecting the dead. Hyrock. Hyrock has a complicated history with necromancy. While the general populace deems it detestable, requiring necromancers to act secretly, several notable instances highlight its influence in the region. The Gravesingers, Hyrock's most formidable witchmen, are renowned for their unmatched skill in controlling the undead. Angolf, a notable Gravesinger, desecrated Cath Bedraud, Breton nobility's revered cemetery, with ambitions to control Glenumbra. His plans were thwarted by the Daggerfall Covenant's Lion Guard, a group adamantly against necromancy. Around the same period, another group of necromancers on Betnik Island met their downfall. Yet, Hyrock couldn't shake off the shadow of necromancy. In 253 of the Third Era, Dwynen's populace suffered under a lich's reign until Othrock, Dwynen's future baron, triumphed. Years later, in 267 the Third Era, Baron Othrock led a coalition against the Cameron usurper, whose undead legions terrorized western Tamriel. While cremation is customary for most Bretons, particularly in northern High Rock, southern regions often opt for burial tombs, making cemeteries like Cath Bedraud vulnerable to necromantic exploitation. The frequent wars in High Rock also provide ample resources for practitioners. Moreover, Wayrest sewers are rumored hubs for the illicit necromancy trade. It's essential to note that not all spirits in Breton folklore are tied to necromancy. Some hauntings are believed to arise when a spirit, upon death, chooses to remain. Such spirits, especially in areas like Glenumber's Moors, are considered commonplace. Lastly, the ancient druids of Galen viewed necromancy differently, seeing it as a genuine expression of faith. They believed it emphasized the culmination of Yefre's life blessing. Morrowind. The Dunmer, with their deep-rooted traditions of ancestor worship, have always viewed necromancy as an evil act, leading to its prohibition in their ancestral homeland. In contrast, human races on Tamriel often misconstrued Dunmer ancestor worship and spirit magic as forms of necromancy. This misunderstanding significantly contributes to the Dunmer's tainted reputation across the continent. From the Dunmer perspective, these beliefs held by other races stem from ignorance. Within Morrowind, any form of necromancy outside sanctioned clan rituals is strictly taboo. However, this distinction between necromancy and ancestor worship, clear to the Dunmer, often goes unnoticed by human races. To the Dunmer, humans and certain beast races are viewed almost on par with animals. Consequently, while the Dunmer condemn necromancy involving their own kind, they don't hold the same reservations for practicing it on human remains or those of animals, birds, or insects. The Telvanni stand out for their adeptness in necromancy, but even they refrain from desecrating a fellow Dunmer's corpse. Some Dunmer even go to the extent of inscribing their skin with magical scripts, appearing as white tattoos, serving as protective wards against the undead. During the Third Empire, Imperial authorities recognized and respected the Dunmer's rituals of ancestor veneration and spirit magic as religious practices. However, privately, many Imperial officials deemed these traditions either necromantic or primitive. Over the Third Era, the Dunmer's perceptions of necromancy shifted, leading them to view the act upon any accepted races as a grave offense by its conclusion. Around 427 the Third Era, Morrowind stood out as the only province where necromancy was illegal, yet it was still practiced, as the Dunmer's engagement in slavery provided necromancers with an ample supply of bodies as long as they could afford them. Orsinium. Necromancers greatly value orc corpses due to their resilient skin and robust bones. Near the close of the Third Era, a faction of necromancers endeavored to set up a trade involving orcish remains with Orsinium. However, the response they garnered from this proposal remains uncertain. Skyrim. Necromancers in Skyrim often operate with relative ease, thanks to the isolated regions provided by the challenging terrain and the cold climate preserving bodies. Although the contemporary populace opposes necromancy, Skyrim's history with the dark art has varied nuances. Historically, the dragon priests of the dragon cult conscripted followers to serve them in death through necromantic rituals. Draugr, a type of undead Nord, would rise in shifts to sustain their dragon priest masters with life energy. These Draugr differ from those raised by necromancers. After the defeat of the dragon cult, the Nords ceased such practices, but continued to inter their dead similarly. The abundant, well-preserved bodies and barrows became resources for necromancers, allowing them to command Draugr. Ancient Nords also used Stalrim and enchanted ice to safeguard corpses from necromancy, though this method lost popularity. In modern times, necromancy remains an underground practice. Adventurers in Skyrim often risk encountering necromancers in remote locations. However, the esteemed College of Winterhold permits its study under specific guidelines. During the War of the Red Diamond, Potima, the Wolf Queen of Solitude, wielded necromancy, raising undead armies to wage war against the Empire. It was only in 137, the Third Era, that she was defeated. Centuries later, in 201, the Fourth Era, a group tried to resurrect her spirit, but the Dragonborn intervened, ensuring Patima's spirit remained banished. The Reachmen, also called the Witchmen of High Rock, due to their dark reach magic, also have ties to necromancy. While some tribes forbid it, the Gravesingers form pacts with Molag Bal, gaining the ability to command the dead by planting seeds of malevolent vines and corpses. Somerset Isles. The Somerset Isles, the original home of both Manam Marco and the Direni clan of Altmer, has a history intertwined with necromancy. While the Direni were pioneers in summoning souls, contemporary Somerset is extremely unwelcoming to necromancers, even more so than Valenwood. A select few elite Altmer may study necromancy, primarily focused on prolonging life. However, these sanctioned necromancers are rare exceptions, as any form of soul manipulation, like soul trapping, is equated with necromancy and strictly forbidden. Unauthorized necromancy in the Isles incurs severe penalties. This strong aversion to necromancy might have been intensified by the Altmer's protracted battles against the Slode of Thras, notorious for their extensive use of the dark arts. Stories about the Slode predominantly revolve around necromancy. They exploited graveyards off the Redguard's coasts, turning them into their necromantic labs. Valenwood. In Valenwood, the Bosmer's profound antipathy for necromancy is noteworthy. Although they don't traditionally follow Arcane's rituals, their ritual cannibalism practice diminishes corpse availability, making the region inhospitable for necromancers. This hostility might be overstated, as some individuals appear indifferent towards reanimating the dead. Historically, when Aelids inhabited Valenwood, they founded Hectaheim, constructed atop the powerful heart of Valenwood. An anonymous necromancer once perverted this heart's power to create an overwhelming undead army, necessitating the city's ceiling to contain the threat. Later, in 249, the Third Era, the Cameron Usurper marshaled a formidable force of Daedra and undead in Valenwood, successfully conquering the province within 2 years. And that concludes our journey into the dark arts, for now. As in our next video, we will dive deep into the path to lichdom in Tamriel. Hope you enjoyed the video. Please let me know what you thought, or if you have ideas for future videos in the comment section. If you did enjoy the content, please hit that like button, and if you want to see more varied lore content in the future, hit that subscribe button. All support is greatly appreciated, but for my standout supporters on Patreon, here's a shout out from my $5 members. Once again, thank you everybody for the support, and I'll see you in the next one.